start with, the best way to learn what Among Us is to play it. You could write a 20-page essay on what it is, but at its core, it's an online multiplayer social deduction computer game, whereby you get to play both competitively against the other players on the team, and cooperatively with the same players to achieve some shared goal. So typically, there's up to 10 players on one map, controlled, and with the goal of fixing a spaceship to let it take off. On that team, there's between 1 and 2 people who are secretly tasked to sabotage that and make sure it doesn't go off. So they have to murder enough players so that the actual players are down to 1. Okay, so nobody knows who the imposter is except the imposter themselves, or imposters. You can have up to 2 on a map. So basically, that sounds very simple, and there are board games based on this. Secret Hitler being one of them, that were incredibly popular. This has just been turned into a digital version and has proved to be incredibly popular. So it's cross-platform, which is, I think, the key to its popularity. So therefore, someone on an iPhone can play with someone on an Android, someone on a PC. So the real beauty of Among Us, and the reason I really, really like promoting it over other games, is because communication is such a fundamental thing for all of us. And I've met 30-year-olds who have poorer communication skills than 10-year-olds, because it's not something that's really, really hit on the head, except really in informal education settings. And we find that the most vulnerable in society often possess, I won't say poor communication skills, but not as refined as those who are traditionally more successful. So it's essentially a game of lying. So for the best experience, I've spoken to a lot of kids who use text. There's an inbuilt text system within the game where you don't need to see or hear each other to play the game. However, for the best experience, you usually link it up with a voice, with another software like Zoom, Discord, or Google Meets, or whatever else, like Skype even, although I haven't heard that being very popular lately. And what the rules of the game are that while you're playing, as in while your character is moving around, there is no communication. You turn off your camera and you turn off your voice. So therefore, all you can see is what you can see, and there's a gray area around you. You can't see anything except what you can physically see in the game. And then for whatever reason, whether someone finds a dead body or just wants to call a meeting to discuss it, everyone turns on their microphone and turns on their camera and discusses what they've seen. Some people may have been with somebody else for the whole game, therefore they couldn't have been the imposter. The imposter could call it and say, well, I was with this person. There's such a level of unknown information that all of the players have to come together and paint a picture together of what has actually happened, in the hopes that they'll catch the imposter. And then after that discussion, which is typically 90 seconds long, so there's a time element there as well. So people not only have to get their point across, like 10 people trying to get their point across in 90 seconds doesn't happen in our meetings within work. Never mind a bunch of young people who are connected via phone. But somehow it works. Somehow they get it. And over time, they really develop these very specific terms and phrases to help paint a picture of what's going on. And then there's a vote at the end. So people can abstain from the vote. Therefore, there is no vote, so we don't know. Or they can vote on one person to kick them off the spaceship because they think it's the imposter. That person may or may not be the imposter. So within the game then, this is where the real value is. And I suppose it's only as good as the person who's observing and pulling out that learning. And again, I'd strongly advocate to play it, because it's the best way to get a good, strong feeling of what's happening. So it allows you to play on the complexities of communication. Things like to promote people to reflect on how they send and receive information, to even what type of information they're sending and receiving, the physically, verbally, and passively. Now, there's loads of other types, but they're the first things that come to mind. So physically seeing someone, there's an element of what are they doing? What are they smiling? Are they not? Does that person? It's like playing poker, I guess, to a degree. It's kind of like, what is their poker face? How are they behaving now versus the last time? I know they were the imposter last time. How are they behaving differently now? So there's so many kind of calculations going on in the mind, and that's social deduction essentially. But what are they doing physically? How does their voice sound? What are they saying? And a really important part of when you're judging anything is, what aren't they saying? What are they leaving out? So you get to play on that. And then, of course, as much as possible, you ask them to apply this to real world. That's when the real fun stuff works, because then you get to talk about things like dominant personalities, passive personalities. We'll say the complexities of truth and lies, honesty and deception. What is honesty? What is deception? Why is it that no matter what situation we're in, we can't really fully put it in the honesty box or the deceptive box? In what situation does being direct really it's not a good move? And then that's a really good one there, because then you can play on young people who aren't maybe living in the safest environment, where you have elements of domestic violence, where you have an unsafe neighborhood. Like we all know young people who are growing up in areas where it's probably not best to go out after 8 o'clock. Where if somebody says something to you, you just agree with them and you keep moving. You can't always stand up for your values and morals and this. There has to be an element of deception built into us to survive. And you pull that out of young people, and you quickly get young people understanding something that we all throw about. We all use the word empathy, and we use it far too much to say that I have empathy. It's one of the most complex skills to develop, and something that young people will be developing throughout their entire life. Carefully and opportunistically is the only way I can say that. I try my absolute best not to turn anything we do into a therapeutic session, into something that would be considered a formal discussion. So as much as possible, I try to inject as much humor as I can. So for example, like, let's just use the name Tom. It's like Tom was lying through his teeth that entire thing. I absolutely love how you were accused for 3 votes and you somehow weaseled your way out of it. How the hell did you manage that? Then you have Tom talking about, well, I just stayed quiet, or I knew if I reacted to you, you'd know well I was lying. And then you push that and you push. And you call someone else and say, how come you didn't spot him? You spotted him last time. What were you thinking? And again, you're just getting this informal communication and the slagging. I cannot emphasize how good slagging amongst friends is. Again, I don't want to get too kind of airy-fairy about it, but the subtle nuances of communication amongst friends or groups of young people that are given permission to not abuse, but to throw away the traditional rules of society and lie to each other and manipulate each other, which is what Among Us is doing. To give them permission to just aggressively chase the truth by whatever means necessary, and then when the game is over, the rules reset and you're back to a different set of rules, which are in life. When you get them into that mindset, they'll hurl accusations at each other, and they'll criticize each other, and they'll give someone a reflection of themselves that person mightn't necessarily be able to apply to themselves. So carefully and opportunistically is my answer. Now, youth workers are incredibly skilled people, and they're probably the worst in the world for showing those skills, or at least talking about them, or representing them in paperwork. But it happens. Like, we were just talking recently. I was delivering some, let's say, simple circuit-based training to a group of youth workers, and one youth worker said, "This is going to be a fantastic way of helping the quieter people in my group become the experts over the really loud people." And I said, like, isn't that one of the most significant pieces of developmental work you could do for a young person who struggles with his confidence? And it's one of the most difficult things to represent on a piece of paper and justify funding for. Whereas if you say, and again, if I'm going playing computer games with kids, like, who the hell is going to fund that? But all these subtle, essential societal rules are being followed within these games. And you also have this opportunity to create an artificial environment whereby you can, you don't, the kids dictate the rules and you follow them with purpose. You then pull out, what are those rules and why are they applicable here? Where else are they applicable? Where else is it completely acceptable to lie? Where is it not acceptable to lie? What's the difference between telling someone a lie to their face and a lie of omission? What if you knew one of your friend's girlfriends wasn't being faithful? Would you tell him? Where is your moral compass there? And this is all coming from a game called Among Us, where you lie to your friends. You get to discuss all these different things. And one of my favorite things, I suppose, to discuss, and of course it depends on the young person, it depends on his circumstances or her circumstances. Now, the majority of my experiences with young fellas, just because of the nature of everything, but it was the right time to tell lies and how that influences you long term. So I'm a big fan of, like, look, I'm not someone who says like if you lie, your soul will go a certain way or you'll live a bad life or whatever. But I do know, and I have a lot of I don't know what the anecdotal evidence, I guess is the word, that if someone is okay with lying long term, that will strongly influence their sense of self, their sense of morals, the amount of enjoyment they get out of their own achievements, their ability to commit to things. And I love playing that out with young people, saying, tell me an example of a time when you've just consistently lied and how you feel about it. Now, they'll never give you the straight answer first time, but you've planted a little seed. You've got them thinking, and inevitably, if you have the opportunity to engage with them long term, you'll pick that conversation up again. And Among Us, again, it's a ruleless society for 10 minutes online where young people get to just vent. First and foremost is probably the simplest one. When we do youth work in person, we always have energizers mixed up, whether they're simple 2-minute games to take the young people away from the developmental work we're doing, re-energize them and bring them back. That's the first thing you should be using Among Us as. Yes, there's a ton of learning in it, but don't turn it into a therapeutic piece. First of all, it's an energizer. It's something for them to engage in. And only when they give you permission to discuss the dynamics that are going on within that group do you jump on it. As a skilled youth worker, you'll spot it. You'll see that opening. Okay, don't push the subject because they will reject it, because this is their game, it's their rules, it's their time. And at any point they can disengage, particularly now when they're online. So seek permission without asking. Judge the dynamic of what's going on before you push the subject. And if it's not coming, just stay using it as an energizer. It will come. Kids love discussing lies, deception, and how smart they are. And this is an exercise on who can be more deceptive than the other. And there always winners will always emerge, and competition will always fly out there. And the quiet ones will become the experts, and they'll become the people that are giving out the advice. So play on that. Don't push it is my first piece of advice. My second piece, well, okay, that sounds really pretentious of me, but another thing that I find really effective when you're working with young people on it is the first few sessions are going to be really quiet. They're going to be really boring because they won't have the lingo. They won't have a lot of them might have more than yourselves, but it's their first time playing it. They won't acknowledge that this is a new space with new societal rules, with new permissions to do new things and say new things. So you might have to dictate some of that. You might have to just aggressively accuse someone of being the imposter, even if you have the clue, and laugh it off. Okay, and vote them off and say, oh my God, I can't believe I thought that was you because you did this, this, and this, and this. And laugh it. And then let them vote you off, or have fun. If you have another member of staff in there, play on it. Do you know, torture them about, just accuse them of everything, so that you're giving young people permission. Say, this is a safe space for you to play the game. You don't have to hold back with your level of communication. You can, this is the shared goal here is to root out the imposter. This kind of behavior is acceptable here. Okay. And then afterwards, whether you're in a place or not, you can say, guys, there's a new set of rules here now. We're not online anymore. Do you know? So encourage the play by being the advocate yourself. So of course, go away, practice. And if you're going to facilitate a group of young people, if they're experts, follow their lead, take their advice, ask questions. And my favorite one is always, I don't know what I'm doing. And you're running around as the imposter killing everyone. Okay. And they will absolutely appreciate that. So play with them, acknowledge that it's their rules here. Okay. And every game of Among Us, every different group has a subtle variation on what's acceptable in the game. You know, they have a different level of skill. They have a different understanding of the game. So use your own discretion or ability to assess that, and slot in wherever you think you can. But constantly remind yourself this is their game. And I'm here as a participant, yes, but I'm also here because I need to observe what's going on, and I need to find out what points I can pull on subtly, very, very subtly. Don't be like, it often happens, and sometimes it can come down to how quickly you have to report on things or justify what you're doing. But just remember, Among Us is here for a good while, all right? And it's going to be here for another long time. So you don't have to achieve everything on the first session. You don't even have to achieve it on the 5th session. What you have to do is develop a kind of a status quo or a behavior that's long-term and sustainable. And the learning can come over a long period of time. And this is, again, Among Us is only one tool in a massive tool belt that you have. It doesn't have to be you don't have to have an Among Us group. You could have a group whereby you start and finish it with a game of Among Us, and you have a topic then in the middle, or you have something entirely different. But it does open quite a lot of conversation for other games as well. So listen for that. And if there's another game, consult with your colleagues or whoever it may be, and see how that can fit in as well. On a side note, I suppose Among Us, it's not 100% applicable to Among Us, but we used to do a lot of work on emotional narratives, on the theory that young people talk to themselves more than they talk to anyone else. And traditionally, young people in vulnerable positions have a very negative opinion of themselves. So we did a lot of world building and character creations. And as we know, young people, they don't write about anything except from their own narrative. So we used computer games like World of Warcraft or other really popular ones, regardless of what main topic it was. But in each of these worlds, there's a set of rules, whether it be down to a different type of physics or a different culture, or all these various different cultures from elves and dwarves and all these other magical things. But within each of those worlds is a new set of rules and a new set of norms. And we often asked young people to write from a narrative that you were in that world, that you were a particular race. So you could pull out racism about an elf. So you're there, you're kind of lessening the risk of offending someone, but also helping a young person to not to have to build their entire world or write a story from scratch. Write something about a character in a computer game. And inevitably, like, you could talk about what are their values, what do they want to achieve, what are all these different things. And then essentially what you're doing is life story work with a young person using a computer game. There's so many free to play games out there where you have to develop a character down to what he looks like, what his strengths and weaknesses are, or her strengths and weaknesses are, and what type of play are you going to do? Where do you fit into the other players? What's your role in the group? What do you have to depend on them for? What do they have to depend on you for? And again, that's one of the many, many massive advantages computer games can give you if you're willing to sit down and play them and learn about them. It's a huge investment. I'm 32 and I'm still learning about them. I'm an advocate for computer games if they're used properly. Of course, they can be used in a negative way, but we're youth workers. That's what we do. We take what's out there and we make it work. And play with each other. Like, start up an old Among Us game in the office. Play with each other. Give each other challenges, like go away, play Minecraft together. Like, it's 10 quid for a server. Build something together in Minecraft. Look at the new emerging computer games that are coming out. And I'm sure the vast majority of managers or funders out there, if you give them the argument to say, we need to learn this, they'll give you the time to do it and the funding to do it as well. Engage in it, reach out to other people that play, get the young people to be the experts as much as you can, get them in to teach you how to do it. I was very lucky to work for an incredibly skilled manager where I worked in a youth setting. And he said, no matter what you do, let the young people lead it. No matter what you're doing, you'll never go wrong if the young people are telling you what to do. It's your job to police it. It's your job to make sure it's within the confines of your insurance or child protection and everything. But like 9 times out of 10, if the young people lead it, you're onto a winner no matter what. And if anyone discovers the secret to representing all the subtle things that we deliver on a daily basis, I'd love to hear them. If I could represent half of the positive outcomes that I manage to help young people achieve, who knows, we might be able to get paid a good living wage.